Basting,
Here.
Bush,
Here.
Chambers,
Here.
Dunn,
Here.
Gunlaw, Lindsay,
Here.
Stefas.
Larry called, he won't be here. So, pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's review the budget.
Okay, so you really have two different budgets before you. Option one is with a no vote on the building referendum. And that will correspond to certifying levy number one, option one. So what we had to do as we got near this meeting, we had to make some adjustments and amendments to the budget. Luke had put in the original budget revenue limit worksheet that we would be getting $50,000 in transfer of services. If you get a student that requires extra services that we don't provide or can't be covered with current staffing, we can file for transfer of services. We did not have any for this particular year, and I don't know if there was an anticipation that he and Dixie were looking at somebody potentially coming in or had approached the district, and that fell through. So we had to take that $50,000 out of transfer of services. That's the TOS on line one. And then because our enrollment actually went up, which was a good thing for Mineral Point, we lost the declining enrollment contribution. So together, those two were $71,581.
And that exemption was budgeted for
It
this
had-
year?
It had been, it was in our previous, and they basically just held everything flat, saying if we go down, if we even lose just one more student, you know, on our rolls this year, we would be qualifying for that amount of money. So it was in the revenue worksheet, revenue limit worksheet early on. So that's the 70,000. We have to reduce for energy efficiencies, the Fund 38 where we borrowed, because that was how much they had reported we had saved on energy, so we need to reduce by $2,500. So that is reflected in the next line down. And then due to the audit by Johnson and Block, Fund 80 was for many years at 75,000, then it bumped up to 95,000, and then it was going to be about 125,000 in this current fiscal year. And through Johnson Block's audit, they're like, you have to be able to justify all the money that you're putting in there. Otherwise, the following year, the state could come back and say, you need to reimburse that monies. So there were a couple of salaries that were moved into Fund 80 that we had to take back out of Fund 80 and put it back in Fund 10. So that's the reduction that you see on this particular line here, reducing Fund 80 levy. So that was a combined 52,000.
So it's just to be clear, Fund 80 is a community service fund.
Correct.
That's above our revenue limit, right?
Yeah, you have the authority to set that dollar amount above and beyond the regular revenue limit without having to go to any kind of vote or
So
referendum.
you're basically taking it back to the 75,000?
Yes, it's going back to 72,000.
And what salaries were taken out of that?
Officer Ottaway had basically 100% of his salary moved into Fund 80, and Joelle had a larger portion of her salary moved into Fund 80. And the DPI puts out a pretty specific, you know, especially in Joelle's case, if you're doing X, Y, and Z, that is not community service. And part of her job description is X, Y, and Z, so it's like, in all honesty, being made aware of it by the auditors, we had no choice but to move that out.
Okay.
And the same thing with Bill, you know, he is on call during the course of the day, so if there's something that comes up as an emergency in the community, he would be called out for that.
These amendments are on the very last page of that.
So his was a little bit easier to justify as 50/50. He does work, with us, but he's still basically the city's employee. We pay the city to turn around and pay him. And how his time is spent, we could easily justify the 50/50 split. So that's what that amount is there. Increasing open enrollment tuition, and then increasing computer aid and personal property, and then reducing equalization aid to the new correct amount based on the state numbers that came out. We actually lost some monies. So then where are those monies going? Basically, Fund 80 is where that money was taken out of or put back into, moving them around. We're amending those locations. So you see now police liaison, it's a 50/50, correcting communications director's salary back to what it was the previous school year. So the percentages prior to being questioned, we moved them back to those amounts.
So 76% is in Fund 80?
Correct.
Okay.
So right now, everything is back to pre-audit amounts where they didn't question those kinds of things.
Before you go down, can you just explain the increase in computer aid and personal property?
Those are from state. The state determines what that is. It used to be they would look around and give you an idea of, okay, businesses that might use computers within your district, and now they just say, here's a flat fee, here's a flat amount. So the larger your community and district is, the larger that amount of money is. And this was just at a training I went to. It's the only reason I know that. And then the personal property, there were some personal properties are exempted from property tax. So the state tries to compensate districts. Again, it's just kind of a flat dollar amount based on the size of our district. And those dollars come straight from the state. They just say, here's the categories they go in, and here's how much you're getting as a school district. We have no way to influence any of those numbers.
Okay, so the computer aid is a flat payment that the state gives to all districts to support the use of computers in the district?
I'm not even sure that that's really what that is for. But they look at it and say, here's the typical computer usage in your area of the state, and due to that, here is
By the community or by the district?
by the district.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily we've added more computers to the district, or we've taken, it's just, we're assuming this is what it is, and it's a flat dollar amount based on our district size.
Okay.
That was the best explanation I got from anybody at the training that the DPI put on this last week.
And the reducing of equalization aid, did we just not get as much as what we were anticipating?
Correct.
Okay, so we didn't lose, we just didn't get what we had.
Right.
Budgeted for.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So then everything that's on the top we're amending, and where did it get amended to is basically on the bottom. So the 52,360 was coming out of some of those locations and being put back in. So it might have been a benefit in one location and needed to be put into a benefit in another location. If it was a salary in one location, it needed to be put into a salary. So from Fund 80 to Fund 10, if it was an insurance benefit in Fund 80, it needed to be put into insurance benefit in Fund 10.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be like categories basically moving forward. So that's the budget. And if you look in your board packet at the first page then, which is option 1, this is as presented, in essence, Well, I shouldn't say as presented at the last board meeting because the mill rate's actually coming down. So you have, in 17-18, we had a revenues of $12,095,000. So here's a part of that reduction. This year we're having revenues of $11,952,000. We have expenditures, basically, of the same amount, presenting you a balanced budget of $11,952,000. Going down to property tax, the general fund, $3,500,000. Non-referendum debt, $120,000. Community service fund went from 95 back to 72,514. So our total levy is $3,698,955. Those numbers, based on property tax support and equalized values, bring the mill rate in at $10.22.
And the numbers have been adjusted for the residents in and out, it looks like.
Yep, I think so. Marcia should put that in there. So if you have the large packet, then basically it's the same, it's a comparison of property tax revenues, top line transfer services of 50,000, and then the Fund 80 levy came down 52,360. So it gives you a mill rate summary, where we've been. So based on this information, option one, the building referendum fails, the mill rate will come in at $10.22. So it shows, the next page, members of the Board of Education each fall, the school district must certify our tax levy. So it gives the 17-18 tax levy of $4,075,000, where you have a decrease, it shows, of 9.23% to $3,698,955. And then you have the revenue limit worksheets, the valuation based on the DPI's reporting from each of the municipalities located within our district. And then tax levies from 2000 until 9, whether it was an increase or a decrease, what the levy amount was. Marcia has put that in years past. I put that in just for your information so you can see where we've kind of been since year 2000, 2001 school year. And then the very last page of that packet is this page on here. So that is budget number one, which corresponds to certifying levy option one. No successful building referendum. Any questions?
Can you summarize just in big picture terms why our budget is less this year than it was last year? I understand why the levy is smaller, because the state aid's bigger and we got more open enrollment tuition.
The property values have gone up.
Property values have gone up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I understand why the levy, even the levy amount is smaller.
Right.
We're levying less money
Right.
total.
That's based on our authority, what we are allowed, based on like revenue caps.
Right, it's a percentage of our total budget,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
But our total budget is smaller this year than it was last year. Right?
Yeah. When we cut
It's down,
300,000 out of the budget.
it's down from 1209 to 1109. And that's partly a remnant from the cuts that we made this summer.
Correct.
Okay.
Trying to make sure that we present a balanced budget. Another thing that impacts what the state gives in state aid, is money that is left into fund balance at the end of each year. And I have not had a chance to dig into it as much as I would like to, but, you know, there was a decision made that basically you were gonna take $100,000 and put it into Fund 46, which is kind of a capital maintenance fund that has to sit for 5 years. And then you took 110,000 and left that in fund balance. And then we get surprised with another 160,000 from the TIF that had to go to fund balance. So at the end of the fiscal year 17-18, we left $270,000 in fund balance, and the state looks at that and says, well, you didn't need that money, therefore we will reduce what we give you in aid the following year.
Why did we do that?
Well, I think, had we known the TIF money was coming back at the end of fiscal year, which was June, you had to do this by June 30. Had we known the TIF money was coming back, it might have been better to say, let's put that in Fund 46, because that you get aided on.
The cobwebs aren't clearing.
Because we got to the end of the fiscal year in June, and there was, help me Andy, it was 210,000, wasn't it? That was left over, and there was a motion made to put leave 110 in fund balance and put 100,000 in Fund 46. I believe that took place at the June board meeting. And then all of a sudden we were notified that the TIF district was closing out and the school district would be getting money back. And then when we were told how much it was going to be, Johnson & Block said that money had to be credited back into the 17-18 fiscal year.
I think
Did we get
part of
for
it was, I
17?
think it might have been 246 roughly, and the 100 we put back into fund balance earmarked for maintenance.
Capital
for this
maintenance,
budget,
correct, yeah,
prior to us knowing about the TIF.
right,
And then we were all under the assumption the TIF was occurring in this fiscal year,
right, yeah,
and because it was reported last year, it had to be reported as a receivable and 17-18 revenue. And by the
Yes.
time we knew that, we were no longer able to spend it.
right.
That isn't funny.
No,
It's like,
And-
I don't mean to smirk, because it kind of makes me mad to think that, okay, so we got the money, but we didn't actually get it in 17, so why should we have to claim it in 17? But we have to because the state says.
right, it's, the auditing components that it closed down in the 17-18 fiscal year needed to be credited back in as a revenue in 17-18, I believe is how that worked. And Dodgeville, Dodgeville Schools got 1.5 million in a closed out TIF, but knew well enough in advance that they applied that towards this upcoming building referendum that they have. To reduce it's a $12 million referendum, and had reduced it by 2 million. $1.5 million came from a TIF that closed out in the Dodgeville district. So had we known this earlier,
And there's no time, I mean, there's written rule saying that we should have been notified sooner or
yeah, that I'm not aware of.
for planning purposes.
It would have been very, and if nothing else, had we known, we could have said, well, put all the leftover budget money last year into Fund 46, and then just the 160 would go in. Now the flip side of that is, by agreeing to use up to $100,000 in capital maintenance projects for the course of this year, we're basically spending money out of fund balance. Next year, we would get reimbursement on the additional expenses. So we kind of left it in the bank, and it cost us, and this next year then, because we're spending it, we'll get some additional aid. You know, and I don't know that it's a great deal, but there's some monies that were taken away this year that will be added back in next year.
So essentially, I mean, we're kind of stuck with more money in savings than we had intended,
Correct.
and, but this might be a good year to make a capital investment expenditure.
Correct.
You know, say, you know, Rakesh got something on his wish list that he wanted to purchase or replace that would last another 15 years. This
Right.
might be the year to do it.
And some of those, a floor scrubber and a couple of those machines
Floor scrubber.
that were some of those bigger ticket items, $15,000
Maybe
ticket
we gotta
item.
postpone.
Yeah, that is now, we've now ordered it basically out of that 100,000 capital maintenance budget. So there are some pieces of equipment that are coming along right now that,
But I gather there isn't a dollar per dollar replacement by the state.
no,
Do you have any idea of percentage at all?
I do not. I could talk to Marcia and try to get,
I just wondering, not that we shouldn't spend money on needed items, it's just, I wonder if we actually get that.
Right.
It's usually about a third, isn't it? A little less.
yeah, it would purely be a guess, so,
So anyway, I mean, our state equalization aid is up, our state categorical aid is up, but it's less than it might have been
correct.
because of our fund balance. But we don't know what that difference is.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's, just, you know, it goes all the way back to 92, 93 when the revenue caps came in. If you were a district that was fiscally responsible and didn't spend, you were locked in at a pretty, I'll say, almost like a chokehold on what you were allowed to do. If you were a district that spent freely and ran up a large debt, and then the revenue cap came in, you were capped at a much higher level. So you had more flexibility, more budget money to start with, to start making cuts compared to districts that were fiscally responsible. So that's option one. Option two, in essence, is with a successful building referendum vote in November, it would be to borrow or levy, not borrow necessarily, levy an additional $400,000. So in essence, instead of an $11.92 million project going to bond, eventually it'll be like 11.52. The first 400,000 would already be here from the taxpayers, and it would be used for referendum debt in the following year, in the next fiscal year. Talking with Lisa, interest rates are starting to inch up a little bit. So if the building referendum is successful, try to sell bonds yet in this year, in 2018, to see if we can get the best interest rates possible based on our financial situation. The $400,000 does a couple of things. Here's where we are at 1209 as a mill rate. And I'd said if the mill rate doesn't pass, or if the referendum doesn't pass, the mill rate drops almost $2 down to $10.22. If we levy the 400,000, the mill rate drops down to 11.33. None of the other items are changing. The Fund 80 money is going back to Fund 10 money. All of those things still stay the same. The only difference is in option 2 or budget option 2. It's issuing a debt of $400,000 now. It gives us an opportunity to make an interest payment next year, in the first year on the loan. You'd have $400,000 already here that you could make an interest payment. The levy would drop from 12.06 to 11.33, which is the same mill rate we had shared last time based on the numbers we had prior to the state getting all the equalization aid in October 15th and the student enrollment, all those things. the levy will still drop down to 1133, so that drop will be a little bit smaller. And then when the building referendum and operating referendum kick in the next year, the climb will be a little bit smaller, moving up. So it kind of smooths out those transitions, and the taxpayers, you know, how come my taxes dropped $2 for the school and next year they're up $4, or, you know, whatever that swing is. It's also an opportunity to kind of help keep that levy a little bit smoother, a little bit flatter across for all the taxpayers.
Any thought process behind 400,000 is the recommended amount?
Basically, in talking with Lisa, there were several numbers thrown out. Anything higher than 400,000 puts the mill rate higher than the 1133, which we had been talking about all along. So I don't want to be seen as, you know, bait and switch anywhere either. So wherever we can get that mill rate to come in at that 1133, where we had been projecting it all along, is where I would like to see it stay. So it still is a decline in the property tax levy. And, you know, to Larry's point, my property tax bills never go down, even if the school's portion is coming down. In all my meetings, I keep reminding people that the city still gets a share, the county gets a share, Southwest Tech gets a share, and just because the school's portion is reduced doesn't mean those other ones don't go up, and in essence make the property taxes either stay the same or go up, simply because there are other needs, you know, redoing roads and sewer lines and, you know, support whatever the college, Southwest Tech, you know, if they're adding on or building over there, we all help pay for those kinds of things. So the $400,000 puts us in a positive fiscal position. The mill rate comes down still to what we were projecting. It gives us an opportunity to have some money set aside already for referendum debt in the upcoming school year. And again, they would go for 2 bonds. The first one to be 10 million or less, which allows, if Farmer Savings in Mound City and any other local banks wish to try to bid on purchasing those bonds, it allows for more competition and, in essence, a better interest rate for the school. So those are the 2 budgets that are attached to certifying the levy.
Kind of going off of Doc's question, had we just went at 1209 instead of 400,000, we could have probably done about 750,000. Then it wouldn't have impacted even, the impact would have been even less if the referendum would go.
Do we ever projected kind of the following year then, maybe what that would jump to?
And try to talk to Lisa, no, she's not sure what just our Fund 10 levy would come in at to try to venture a guess as to what next year would be. Because I tried to push her and say, okay, so you know, we're saying the building referendum comes in and it's about $1.78, and you know, if the operating comes in at 74 cents averaged out over 20 years, you know, does that mean that the levy's gonna go up $2, you know, in some odd sense? And she said, while that's sound thinking, you just don't know what the Fund 10 revenue limit, that levy's gonna come in at, and that could be anywhere. It could be another reduction in our Fund 10, so then it doesn't go up as high, or all of a sudden we get more. And
But I mean, you would think that there would be some way to almost figure that too, historically looking back and saying, okay, it's up or down, just what's a
right,
rough
you
average
can
something.
make predictions, you know, and I could probably,
I'd say worst case prediction, at least give an
Right.
idea, you know?
because I know she gave me one at 500,000. Let's see if I can pull that up quickly.
I had thought Lisa shared her PowerPoint presentation, but she didn't. That didn't get passed around, did it?
She gave us a pack.
Hard copy, oh. Ooh. Student matter. Okay. think she's predicting it to
There
go,
it is there, I see it,
500,000 would push it up to 1160, the mill rate at 1160. So it would come down from 1206 to 1160 at 500,000. So it's 30 cents, 27 cents more. I don't know if it would be,
Jeff, looks like according to this graph, it would, if we didn't do anything, it would bump up to like 13 and a half and then slowly creep down over time.
And those are a little high, I think, because she was basing it on 5%
Property value growth.
valuation increase. I think it came in a little higher than that.
So I guess what Mitch is saying, and it sounds like the community perception is that the mill rate's gonna go down a little bit. And they're thinking this 11.3 number. And you don't wanna create a perception that
that we're
we're taxing more money
correct.
than the previous year. So and that makes some sense. But I mean, I think the number is fairly arbitrary as far as
Yeah.
how much we want to save ahead of time.
Correct. So those are the two budget with amendments for options 1 and 2. Any other questions?
So when we certify this levy,
Yeah.
and somebody makes a motion, are we passing both of these?
Yes.
That's
Only-
legal.
Yes.
We're only certifying the first one.
One's contingent.
You'll do it this, and this came from Quarles and Brady because trust me, when I was in with the DPI, they were like, well, you should probably get legal counsel, this, everything else, and I got from Quarles and Brady. Because school districts go to referendum November 6th, the municipalities don't have to have anything until the 10th. So you can, in essence, certify 2 different levies, and based on a successful or unsuccessful referendum. So, the motion could be, if the building referendum is unsuccessful, I move we certify option 1,
Okay.
which is without the 400,000.
Do we have anything certified right now?
No. No, because it takes this board meeting has to happen, and then Marcia inputs, here's what was certified at the school district level. She puts that in the DPI's website. And then it would be, if there is, and this is purely up to the school board, but if the building referendum is successful, you could move forward with option 2, which levies $400,000 now to be a little bit
Get
more
ahead of the
prepared. Yeah.
And
So then,
smooth out the mill rate increase.
yes, so whatever happens on election night, Doc Lindsay, you're the clerk, correct?
Yes, I am.
So you would sign off on whichever comes as a result of the election. The other one just simply gets destroyed, and what gets delivered to the municipalities is the option based on successful referendum or not.
Okay.
So, next item is the training update. Shayna Lewis is coming out on Friday to meet with Vicki, Angie, Matt, and myself in regards to the training that you had recommended we have. So from 9 until noon, she will be here with us, making sure we have everything we need to conduct an investigation.
Do you think you should maybe have Andy in on that too?
I can certainly pull him in on that.
Anybody have any objections to that?
No.
I would add him too.
Okay,
And is there anybody else that,
That's next Wednesday, is it?
Friday.
Friday.
This Friday.
Oh, it
The 26th?
Yep,
is. 26.
and I'm sorry, what time did you say?
9 to noon. So, and when I said Angie, I meant Angela Klein, not Angie Schubert, and myself. So we'll do it here, probably here in the boardroom, so if anybody is available and would like to sit in for any part of that, we'll be in here on Friday from 9 until noon. In regards to the other investigation, I have collected as many of the communications that I can, and have sent that on to Shayna Lewis ahead of time as well. She'd asked for as much information as I could provide her, so she is now in possession of all of that, and
That's the 6th grade issue that
yes,
has arisen.
Yep.
That everybody's aware of.
so we're proceeding forward with that. I did reach out, and there was no reply, but I did reach out to the mother again in the communication, but like I said, no reply has come to me since our last board meeting.
Okay, so going to action items.
So you have two options. Levy one, or option one, levy option one is, if this is the direction you choose to go, is if the building referendum is not successful. And levy option two would be if the building referendum is successful.
We should probably pass the amendments separately,
Correct.
because they have a separate majority requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right, so Susan, we need a motion to approve the amendments to the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, separate from the amendment to certify.
that last page.
Yeah.
And I guess you would probably need to do that along the same lines as this certifying.
I'll move that we accept the amendments, option 1 on a failed referendum, option 2 on a passed referendum.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Angie, let's call a question.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Yes.
Basting.
Okay. Carry the amendments. We want to make a motion on our two options.
I'll make a motion that we certify the levy, levy option 1 on a failed referendum, levy option 2 on a successful referendum.
Building, right?
Building referendum,
Yeah.
yes.
Second that.
Okay, I have a stupid question. If is there any reason that I'm assuming we can't do option 2 if the referendum does not pass, correct?
Correct.
So the only way we do option 2 is if it does pass, otherwise option 1 has to be.
Correct.
Okay, I now understand.
It used, when you could levy up to $1 million for energy efficiency, you had some more flexibility. So you could levy the $400,000, and if the building referendum failed, you could have said, well, we're just gonna use it for energy efficiencies, but the state closed that opportunity. You can't levy for energy efficiency anymore. So I guess you could do it, but you would be paying back $400,000 out of Fund 10 monies, and we don't have that sitting around.
And actually, I'm glad that our community service fund is back to where it should have been all along. That little game was taken to the extreme. Okay, any other discussion on certifying the levy?
Just for point's sake, I guess we should receive some interest savings by paying the $400,000 a year earlier than we would have otherwise.
I would imagine we would, yes. If the first payment is purely an interest payment.
Then in year two, we would owe less interest and more principal and
Right.
on the 400,000, so if it's 4%, we could save roughly 16,000 by starting early.
Yes.
Let's call the question,
Okay.
please.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Basting.
Yes. Okay. Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor, and anybody opposed?
Aye.